One of the many dramatic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic has been to undermine the European migration system. The temporary closures of the Schengen area, the mass returns of seasonal workers, the worsening of the already difficult sanitary conditions within the various European ghettos are just some of the events that occurred between spring and summer 2020. According to Eurostat, at the beginning of 2019, there were approximately 41 million foreigners residing in the EU 28, or 8% of the total population. 18 million of whom were EU citizens residing in a country other than their country of citizenship. The closure of legal channels of entry has left many people fleeing wars, persecution and environmental disasters with a last chance, the so-called journeys of death, which involve crossing several borders irregularly. According to the IOM, 5,306 migrants worldwide lost their lives in 2019 in a vain attempt to cross borders between states, and another 1,772 died between the 1st of January and the 15th of September 2020. Together with a decrease in asylum applications, the number of irregular border crossings in the EU intercepted by Frontex has also plummeted. As is well known, in the central Mediterranean this result was achieved at the cost of a considerable number of migrants who died at sea or were apprehended by the Libyan Coast Guard, purposely financed by Italy and the European Union, and taken back to detention camps in Libya, where they were once again subjected to violence and torture. At the beginning of 2020, there were 5,300,000 foreigners residing in Italy, 8.8% of the total population, only 47,000 more than in 2019. Non-EU foreigners alone, however, decreased by almost 102,000 in a single year to 3,615,000, against a corresponding and probable increase in irregular immigrants. Their number would have risen from 562,000 in 2018 to almost 700,000. Had it not been for last summer's regularization campaign, in fact, with some 220,500 applications, after a long period in which the growth of immigrants compensated for the natural decrease in the Italian population, the rapid demographic decline observed since 2015 is unfortunately confirmed, with the total population decreasing by 551,000 people in just 5 years. This decline will be exacerbated by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, but would be far more dramatic without the demographic contribution of the foreign population. In particular, there are around 200 foreign communities in Italy. The most numerous are still the Romanians, who account for almost a quarter of all foreign residents in our country, 1.2 million. Followed by Albanians and Moroccans with over 400,000 citizens, Chinese with just over 300,000 and Ukrainians with about 240,000. The huge discrepancy between the just 11,471 migrants who arrived by sea in 2019 and the 261,000 new foreign residents from abroad is a proof of the exaggerated over-representation of the landings phenomenon provided by the media as well as by the public and political debate. This distortion concerns not only arrivals by sea, which are only a few tens of thousands per year since 2018, but also the actual number of people immigrating to Italy for protection reasons. About 220,000 at the end of 2019, only 6.1% of all non-EU nationals and just 0.4% of the entire Italian population. The questionable policies of preventing and rejecting landings, combined with the absence of a stable entry program for foreign workers from abroad since 2011, and the abolition of humanitarian protection permits as of 2018, have led both to an emptying of reception centers, whose guests dropped from 183,800 in 2017 to 84,400 at the end of June 2020, causing an outflow of almost 100,000 migrants in just 2.5 years, as well as a drastic fall in the rate of recognition of applications for protection submitted in Italy, from 32.2% in 2018 to just 19.7% in 2019. Half the European average. These two factors contribute to an increased risk of irregularity among immigrants in our country. The integration of foreigners into the Italian social fabric is also showing worrying signs of fragility and marginalization. Although the 858,000 foreign students have come to represent 10% of the entire school population in the 2018-2019 school year, as many as 2 out of 3 of them are born in Italy, they still encounter considerable challenges and barriers that deeply affect their school performance and achievements. This is also demonstrated by the marked preference of foreign pupils for technical or vocational schools rather than lyceums, which are chosen by only 30% of foreign pupils, compared with a national average of 50%, and the steady decline in the incidence of foreign students in higher education, from 11.5% in primary schools to 7.4% in high schools and just 5.4% at university. Access to housing also remains problematic for immigrants, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. While in 2019, 21.8% of foreign residents lived in a house they owned, compared to 80% of Italians, and 63.6% lived in a rented house, it has been estimated that at the end of 2020, property purchases and sales by foreigners have plummeted by 53%. As has the relative average expenditure and the quality of houses purchased. Last but not least, although the 127,000 foreigners who acquired Italian citizenship in 2019 appear to be on the rise compared to the previous year because of an antiquated citizenship law that has not been reformed in 28 years, they still do not include the 63,000 newborns to foreign couples. 15% of the total 435,000 births registered in Italy in 2019, the lowest rate since the country's unification in 1861. In 2019, 2,505,000 citizens, only 43.7% of whom were women, worked legally in Italy, accounting for 10.7% of all employed people in our country. However, in a labor market as highly fragmented as the Italian one, these people generally only find the most risky, tiring, low-paid and low-skilled jobs, to which they remain stuck even after years of service and residence in the country. It is no coincidence that about 2/3 of them have unskilled or blue-collar jobs, compared to an average of 30% among Italian workers, while only 8% of foreign workers have skilled jobs, compared to 38.7% of Italians. In particular, foreign citizens account for almost 1/5 of all workers employed in construction, agriculture and the hotel and restaurant sector, and 68.8% of all workers in domestic services, where as many as 40.6% of foreign women are employed. More than 50% of foreign workers are concentrated in only 13 occupations compared to 44 among Italian workers, and only 3 in the case of female workers: domestic, personal care and business cleaning services. It is not surprising, therefore, that as many as 1/3 of foreign workers are overeducated compared to 23.9% of Italians, and that their average net monthly salary is 24% lower than that of Italian workers, €1,077 versus €1,408. The COVID-19 pandemic is also taking a heavy toll on businesses run by immigrants, 616,000 in 2019, or 10.1% of all self-employed activities in Italy, which has already decreased by as much as 40% in the first half of 2020 compared to the same period last year. In this context, which is made even more complex by the present crisis, the Statistical Dossier on Immigration continues its mission to disseminate scientific information and a culture of dialogue and participation in order to promote a more open and inclusive society in our country.